Bryant held the euthanasia appointment card in her trembling hands, watching her 13-year-old German Shepherd Kira struggle to stand. The arthritis had taken so much from her faithful partner, but what she discovered in that underground shelter would prove that some bonds transcend even death. The girl's terrified eyes staring back at her from the darkness held secrets that connected to Riley's darkest military case, and suddenly putting Kira down became the least of her worries. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The veterinary clinic's waiting room felt like a tomb to Bryant as she sat beside Kira, her fingers threading through the grating fur of her German Shepherd's neck. 13 years of partnership had brought them to this moment, something she had dreaded since the day she first met the energetic puppy at the military kennel in Afghanistan. The appointment card crumpled slightly in her other hand, the words, "Quality of Life Consultation," printed in clinical black letters that somehow made everything feel more final. Kira's breathing had become labored over the past month, her one-sprout stance now reduced to careful, calculated movements that spoke of constant pain. Riley had watched her partner transform from the fierce military working dog who could detect explosives from 50 yards away to a gentle senior who needed help climbing the 3 steps to their front porch. The decision should have been easier, she told herself. Every veterinarian, every fellow handler, every well-meaning friend had told her the same thing. When the bad days outnumber the good ones, love means letting go. But sitting here now, watching Kira's amber eyes track every movement in the waiting room with the same alertness that had kept them both alive during 2 tours of duty, Riley felt her resolve crumbling. This dog had been more than a partner. She had been Riley's anchor during the worst moments of her military service, her comfort during sleepless nights plagued by memories of roadside bombs and failed missions, her constant companion through the difficult cold. Transition back to civilian life. Dr. Martinez emerged from the examination room, his kind eyes immediately finding Riley's. "Mrs. Bryant, we're ready for you." His voice carried the gentle tone that veterinarians reserve for these appointments, and Riley felt her stomach clench. "Actually," Riley heard herself saying, standing slowly and helping Kira to her feet, "I think we need a little more time. Maybe one more walk through the woods behind my house. She always loved those trails." Dr. Martinez nodded with understanding, having seen this hesitation countless times before. "Of course, take all the time you need. When you're ready, just call and we'll fit you in." The drive home took them through the winding roads of rural Oregon, past towering Douglas firs and the occasional glimpse of the Cascade Mountains in the distance. Riley had chosen this remote property specifically for its isolation, needing space to heal from wounds that went deeper than the physical scars on her left shoulder. The 20-acre plot included dense forest, a small creek, and most importantly, no neighbors close enough to worry about her occasional nightmares. Kira perked up as they turned into the gravel driveway, recognizing the familiar surroundings. Despite her physical limitations, the dog's tail managed a few tentative wags, and Riley felt a fresh wave of guilt wash over her. How could she make this decision when Kira still showed moments of joy, still responded to familiar places and routines? The late afternoon sun filtered through the canopy of trees as Riley clipped a lightweight leash to Kira's collar. They had long since moved past the need for leashes during their walks, but Kira's increasing unsteadiness made Riley nervous about letting her wander freely. The familiar trail wound through second-growth forest, following the path of an old logging road that had been reclaimed by nature decades ago. For the first half-mile, they maintained their usual companionable pace, Kira moving slowly but steadily beside Riley's left leg, just as she had been trained. Riley found herself cataloging every detail of the walk, trying to memorize the way afternoon light caught the silver in Kira's coat, the sound of her steady breathing, the particular way she held her head when investigating interesting scents along the trail. They had reached the halfway point of their usual route when Kira suddenly stopped, her entire body going rigid with alertness. Riley felt the familiar chill of recognition, the muscle memory of countless patrols where that exact posture had preceded the discovery of hidden dangers. Kira's nostrils flared as she tested the air, her head turning slowly from side to side in the methodical pattern that had once meant the difference between life and death for their unit. "What is it, girl?" Riley whispered, automatically dropping her voice to the level they had used during night operations. Her hand moved instinctively to her hip, where she had once carried a sidearm, finding only empty space. Civilian life still felt foreign after 3 years, especially in moments like this, when Kira's training kicked in. Without warning, Kira pulled forward with strength that belied her age and condition, her arthritis seemingly forgotten in the face of whatever had captured her attention. The leash grew taut as the dog moved off the main trail, pushing through undergrowth with determination that reminded Riley powerfully of their working days. "Kira, easy," Riley called, but found herself following. Something in the dog's demeanor triggered all of her own training, the instincts honed through years of trusting Kira's nose above all other senses. They had been a team, and teams didn't abandon each other, especially when one member detected something important. The terrain grew rougher as they left the maintained trail, requiring Riley to push through dense bracken fern and dodge low-hanging branches. Kira moved with increasing urgency, her breathing becoming more labored, but her pace never slowing. Riley noticed they were heading toward a section of forest she rarely explored, an area where the old logging roads had been completely reclaimed, and the undergrowth grew thick enough to block most sunlight. After 20 minutes of difficult hiking, Kira stopped abruptly in a small clearing, dominated by what appeared to be a concrete structure, partially hidden by decades of plant growth. Riley recognized it immediately as a Cold War IRA fallout shelter, one of hundreds built throughout rural Oregon during the 1950s and 60s. Most had been abandoned and forgotten, left to be slowly consumed by the forest. But this one showed signs of recent activity. The heavy steel door, which should have been rusted shut, stood slightly ajar. Fresh tire tracks marked the soft earth nearby, and Riley could see where vegetation had been deliberately cleared away from the entrance. Her military training kicked into high gear as she assessed the situation, noting escape routes and potential threats, while Kira continued to strain toward the shelter. The dog's behavior had shifted from alert to distressed, whining softly as she pawed at the ground near the entrance. Riley had seen this behavior before, during building searches in Iraq when Kira had detected human scent in places where no humans should be. The memory sent ice through Riley's veins as she realized what they might have discovered. Moving closer to the entrance, Riley caught a faint sound that made her blood run cold. A soft sobbing, barely audible but unmistakably human. Someone was inside the shelter, and based on Kira's agitation, they were in distress. Riley's mind raced through possibilities. As she approached the entrance, Kira pressed close against her leg. The smart thing would be to return home and call the police, let trained professionals handle whatever situation they had stumbled upon. But the sobbing continued, desperate and frightened, and Riley found herself remembering another time when hesitation had cost lives. The steel door creaked as she pulled it open further, revealing a set of concrete steps leading down into darkness. The smell that wafted up was a mixture of dampness, fear, and human waste that immediately transported Riley back to the worst moments of her military service. Someone had been kept in this shelter against their will, and they were still here. "Hello?" Riley called softly into the darkness, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm here to help. I'm not going to hurt you." The sobbing stopped abruptly, replaced by a silence so complete that Riley could hear her own heartbeat. Kira whined again, more urgently now, and Riley made her decision. Drawing on every bit of courage that had gotten her through 2 combat deployments, she started down the concrete steps, one hand on Kira's collar and the other trailing along the wall for guidance. The shelter was larger than she had expected, with concrete walls that extended beyond the reach of the faint light filtering down from the entrance. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, Riley began to make out details that made her stomach turn. Makeshift sleeping areas, supplies that suggested long-term occupancy, and in the far corner, a figure huddled against the wall. "Please don't hurt me," came a voice so small and frightened that Riley felt her heart break. "I'll be good. I promise I'll be good." Moving slowly and keeping her voice gentle, Riley approached the figure, Kira staying close beside her. "I'm not here to hurt you, sweetheart. My name is Riley, and this is my dog Kira. We're here to help you get out of here." As she drew closer, Riley could see that the figure was a young girl, perhaps 12 or 13 years old, with long dark hair matted with dirt and tear-stained cheeks. Heavy chains secured to the concrete wall kept her anchored in place, the metal links disappearing into the shadows. The sight triggered a fury in Riley that she hadn't felt since her military days, a protective rage that made her hands shake. But it was when the girl looked up, meeting Riley's eyes in the dim light, that the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Riley found herself staring into a face she recognized, features that haunted her dreams and had driven her to leave the military 3 years earlier. "Maria?" Riley whispered, the name escaping her lips before she could stop it. The girl's eyes widened with confusion and fear. "How do you know my name? Who are you?" Riley's mind reeled as memories flooded back, memories of her final case as a military police officer in Afghanistan. Maria Gonzalez, age 12, daughter of an American contractor who had been kidnapped from a secure compound outside Kabul. Riley had been part of the team assigned to find her, had spent weeks following leads and interviewing witnesses, had watched security footage until her eyes burned. They had never found her. The case had been closed after 6 months, officially listed as a probable death, and Riley had been rotated back to the States shortly afterward. The failure had eaten at her, contributing to her decision to leave the military and seek solitude in the Oregon woods. She had never stopped wondering what had happened to Maria Gonzalez. "Maria, my name is Riley Bryant. I was part of the team that looked for you in Afghanistan 3 years ago. Your father was David Gonzalez. He worked for Harrison Defense Contractors." The girl's expression shifted from fear to desperate hope. "You know my daddy? Is he looking for me? Please tell me he's looking for me." Riley's heart broke at the hope in the girl's voice. David Gonzalez had died in a roadside bombing 6 months after his daughter's disappearance, information that Riley had no intention of sharing with Maria right now. Instead, she focused on the immediate situation, examining the chains that held the girl captive. The restraints were professional grade, the kind used in high-security facilities, and they had been secured with heavy-duty padlocks that would require bolt cutters to remove. Riley pulled out her cell phone, hoping for signal, but the concrete shelter blocked any communication with the outside world. "Maria, I need you to tell me who brought you here. How long have you been in this place?" The girl's face crumpled with the effort of remembering. "I don't know how long. There's no windows, no clocks. The man, he comes with food sometimes. He tells me I have to wait, that someone is coming to take me away soon." Kira had been pacing restlessly during their conversation, her training alerting her to potential threats. Now she moved to the entrance of the shelter, her body language shifting to full alert. Riley recognized the posture immediately, the same stance Kira had taken countless times when hostile forces approached their position. "Someone's coming," Riley whispered to Maria, her military training taking over. "Stay quiet and don't move." The sound of footsteps on the concrete stairs confirmed Kira's warning, heavy boots descending slowly into the shelter. Riley positioned herself between Maria and the entrance, wishing desperately that she had brought some form of weapon. Her eyes scanned the shelter for anything she could use to defend them, settling on a length of broken concrete near the wall. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness as a figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Riley found herself facing a tall man in his 40s, with graying hair and military bearing that immediately marked him as former service. His eyes swept the shelter, taking in Riley's presence with surprise that quickly shifted to calculation. "Well, this is unexpected," he said, his voice carrying the calm tone of someone accustomed to violence. "Mrs. Bryant, isn't it?" Riley Bryant, formerly Staff Sergeant Bryant of the 401st Military Police Company. Riley felt ice water flow through her veins at the use of her military designation. This was no random kidnapper. He knew exactly who she was. "Who are you?" The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Colonel James Patterson, formerly of Harrison Defense Contractors. I believe you remember that name." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Harrison Defense had been the company that employed Maria's father, the same company that had been under investigation for trafficking and money laundering when Riley left Afghanistan. Patterson had been mentioned in the files, a former military officer who had joined the company after retirement and quickly risen to a leadership position. "You took her," Riley said, the words coming out as a statement rather than a question. "You've had Maria for 3 years." Patterson nodded casually, as if discussing the weather. The Gonzalez situation was unfortunate but necessary. David had discovered certain irregularities in our operations. Information that could have compromised a very lucrative business arrangement. Taking his daughter was meant to ensure his silence. But he died in that bombing, Riley said, pieces of the puzzle clicking together. Yes, that was convenient timing, wasn't it? Patterson's smile grew colder. Poor David, so focused on finding his daughter that he stopped paying attention to his surroundings. Roadside bombs are so unpredictable. The casual admission of murder sent fury coursing through Riley's system. She had known David Gonzalez, had interviewed him multiple times during the investigation. He had been a good man, a devoted father who had taken the contracting job to provide for his daughter after his wife's death from cancer. Why keep her alive all this time? Riley asked, stalling for time while her mind worked through possible escape scenarios. Maria has proven quite valuable, Patterson explained, his tone remaining conversational despite the horror of his words. Certain clients pay premium prices for exclusive long-term arrangements. Young Maria here has been promised to a collector in Southeast Asia who specializes in American children. Riley felt bile rise in her throat at the implication. Maria whimpered behind her, and Riley heard the chains rattle as the girl tried to shrink further into the corner. Kira had moved to Riley's side, her body coiled with tension as she sensed the threat Patterson represented. The original plan was to complete the transaction this week, Patterson continued. But your unexpected arrival has complicated things. I'm afraid I can't allow you to leave here with this information. Patterson's hand moved to his jacket, and Riley saw the outline of a weapon beneath the fabric. Her own hand closed around the chunk of concrete she had identified earlier, while her mind calculated distances and angles. She would have one chance to act before he could draw his gun. But it was Kira who moved first. The aging German shepherd launched herself at Patterson with strength that defied her arthritis, 85 pounds of muscle and training driving the man backward into the concrete wall. His flashlight flew from his hand, clattering across the floor and casting wild shadows throughout the shelter. Riley didn't hesitate. She brought the concrete chunk down on Patterson's wrist as he struggled to reach his weapon, hearing bones crack with the impact. He screamed and dropped the gun, which skittered away into the darkness. Kira maintained her grip on his arm, shaking her head with the same intensity she had once used to subdue insurgents. "Kira, release!" Riley commanded, and the dog immediately let go, falling back to guard position. Patterson slumped against the wall, cradling his injured arm and glaring at Riley with undisguised hatred. Riley quickly located his weapon, a military-issue Beretta that felt familiar in her hands, despite 3 years away from service. She checked the chamber in safety with automatic precision, then trained the weapon on Patterson while keeping her distance. "Where are the keys to those chains?" she demanded. Patterson spat blood from where he had bitten his tongue during Kira's attack. "You have no idea what you're interfering with, Bryant. This operation has connections that reach higher than you can imagine." "The keys," Riley repeated, her voice carrying the authority she had once used to command respect from subordinates. Realizing he had no choice, Patterson reached into his pocket with his uninjured hand and produced a set of small keys. Riley carefully retrieved them, never allowing the gun to waver from its target, then moved to Maria's side. The girl was shaking uncontrollably as Riley worked to unlock the restraints, 3 years of captivity having taken a terrible toll on her spirit. When the chains finally fell away, Maria collapsed against Riley, sobbing with relief and terror in equal measure. "It's okay, sweetheart," Riley whispered, wrapping one arm around the girl while keeping the gun trained on Patterson. "You're safe now. We're going to get you out of here." But getting out proved more complicated than getting in. Riley knew she needed to contact authorities, but her phone still showed no signal in the concrete shelter. Patterson would require medical attention for his broken wrist, and Maria was in no condition for a difficult hike through the forest. "How did you get here?" Riley asked Patterson. "Vehicles parked at the old logging road, about half a mile east," he admitted grudgingly. "Keys in my other pocket." Riley retrieved the vehicle keys, noting they belonged to a black SUV, the same type she had seen tire tracks from near the shelter entrance. The plan began to form in her mind. Get all three of them to the vehicle, drive to where she could get cell service, then call for backup. But first, she needed to secure Patterson to prevent him from attempting escape. The chains that had held Maria would serve that purpose perfectly. Working one-handed while keeping the gun ready, Riley managed to secure Patterson to the same anchor point that had held Maria captive. "You can't leave me here like this," Patterson protested as Riley tested the chains. "I need medical attention." "You'll get medical attention once the authorities arrive," Riley replied coldly. "Consider yourself lucky that I'm not leaving you here to rot like you planned to do with Maria." Supporting Maria with one arm, Riley helped the girl climb the concrete steps back to ground level. The late afternoon sun seemed blindingly bright after the darkness of the shelter, and Maria squinted against the light like someone emerging from a cave. Kira followed slowly, her earlier burst of energy having cost her dearly. Riley could see the dog was struggling, her breathing labored and her gait unsteady. The excitement and exertion had pushed her aging body beyond its limits, but she had performed when it mattered most, just as she always had. The half-mile hike to Patterson's vehicle took nearly an hour, with frequent stops to allow both Maria and Kira to rest. Riley maintained constant vigilance, aware that Patterson might have associates who could arrive at any time. The black SUV sat exactly where he had indicated, a light model Ford Explorer with tinted windows and government plates. Riley helped Maria into the passenger seat, then lifted Kira into the back. The dog was clearly exhausted, her breathing shallow and rapid in a way that filled Riley with worry. But there would be time to address Kira's condition once Maria was safe and Patterson was in custody. The drive down the mountain took them through increasingly familiar territory until Riley finally gained cell service near the town of Cascade Locks. Her first call was to 911, reporting the kidnapping and requesting immediate assistance. Her second call was to the FBI field office in Portland, knowing that a case involving international trafficking would require federal involvement. Within an hour, the quiet mountain road had become a hub of law enforcement activity. FBI agents, local police, paramedics, and social workers all converged on the scene, turning the forest into a carefully controlled crime scene. Riley found herself separated from Maria as professionals took over, conducting interviews and gathering evidence. Agent Sarah Chen, the FBI case officer assigned to the investigation, was a woman in her 30s with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded Riley of her own military commanders. She interviewed Riley extensively about the discovery of the shelter and her previous connection to the Maria Gonzalez case. "This is going to be huge," Agent Chen explained as they sat in her vehicle, away from the chaos of the crime scene. "Patterson's arrest is going to unravel a trafficking network that we've been investigating for years. Your discovery of Maria has provided the break we needed." Riley nodded, but her attention was focused on the ambulance where paramedics were examining Kira. The dog had collapsed during the wait for authorities to arrive, her system finally giving in to the stress and exertion of the day. A veterinarian had been called to the scene, a young woman who worked closely with law enforcement agencies. "How is she?" Riley asked Dr. Emily Foster as the veterinarian completed her examination. Dr. Foster's expression was gentle but serious. "She's in heart failure, Ms. Bryant. The excitement and physical exertion today pushed her system beyond what her aging heart can handle. I can provide supportive care, but her condition is critical." Riley felt the world tilt around her as the reality sank in. The day that had begun with plans to euthanize Kira was ending with the dog fighting for her life after one final heroic act. She knelt beside the stretcher where Kira lay, the dog's breathing shallow but her eyes still alert. "You did good, girl," Riley whispered, stroking the graying fur behind Kira's ears. "You saved her. You saved Maria." Agent Chen approached quietly, having overheard the conversation with the veterinarian. "Ms. Bryant, the girl is asking for you. She won't speak to our counselors, but she's been asking when she can see you and Kira again." Riley looked up from where she knelt beside her partner. "Is she going to be okay?" "Physically, yes. She's malnourished and shows signs of long-term psychological trauma, but she's young and resilient. The emotional healing will take time, but she has family in California who are flying in tomorrow. An aunt who's been searching for her since the kidnapping." End quote. The mention of family brought tears to Riley's eyes. After 3 years in captivity, Maria would finally have the chance to rebuild her life, to experience safety and love again. The thought made every moment of this day worthwhile, despite the cost to Kira. Dr. Foster was preparing to transport Kira to the emergency veterinary clinic in Portland when Maria appeared at Riley's side, a social worker hovering protectively nearby. The girl looked small and fragile in clothes provided by the Red Cross, but her eyes held a determination that reminded Riley of her father. "Is Kira going to be okay?" Maria asked, kneeling beside the stretcher and gently touching the dog's paw. Riley struggled to find words that would be honest without destroying hope. "She's very sick, sweetheart. But she's a fighter, just like you are." Maria was quiet for a long moment, studying Kira's face with the intense focus of someone much older than her 13 years. "She saved me, didn't she? You both saved me." "Kira knew you were in trouble," Riley explained. "Dogs have special senses that help them find people who need help. She led me to you because she knew you needed to come home." Tears streamed down Maria's face as she continued to stroke Kira's paw. "Will you tell her thank you for me? Even if I can't see her again, will you tell her I said thank you?" Riley's throat constricted with emotion, but she managed to nod. "I'll tell her, Maria, I promise." The transport to the veterinary clinic took place in a convoy of vehicles, with Agent Chen ensuring that Riley could accompany Kira in the ambulance. The drive down from the mountains passed in a blur of sirens and radio chatter, with Dr. Foster providing supportive care while monitoring Kira's vital signs. At the clinic, Kira was rushed into intensive care, while Riley found herself in a waiting room that felt eerily similar to the one where this day had begun. But everything had changed in the space of those few hours. The dog she had planned to euthanize had instead become a hero, saving the life of a girl who had been lost for 3 years. Dr. Foster emerged from the treatment area after what felt like hours, but had probably been less than one. Her expression was carefully neutral, the look medical professionals wear when delivering difficult news. "We've stabilized her for now," she began, taking the seat beside Riley. "Her heart is responding to medication, and she's resting comfortably. But Miss Bryant, I need you to understand that her condition is terminal. We might have days, possibly weeks, but the damage to her heart is irreversible." Riley nodded, having expected this news, but still feeling its impact like a physical blow. "Can I see her?" "Of course. She's been asking for you." The intensive care unit was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors and the whoosh of ventilation systems. Kira lay on a padded table, the 4th lines connected to her front leg and oxygen being delivered through a nasal cannula. Despite the medical equipment, her tail managed a weak wag when Riley appeared. "Hey, partner," Riley whispered, positioning herself where Kira could see her easily. "How are you feeling?" Kira's eyes were bright with intelligence, despite her physical weakness, and Riley could see in them the same determination that had characterized their entire partnership. The dog had always been a fighter, from her early training days through their combat deployments. And she was fighting still. Dr. Foster joined them in the treatment area, checking Kira's chart and adjusting medication levels. "She's comfortable," she assured Riley. "The pain medication is keeping her peaceful, and her breathing is stabilized." "How long?" Riley asked the question she needed answered, even though she dreaded the response. "It's hard to say with certainty. Her heart could give out tonight, or she could rally and have several good weeks ahead of her. Dogs are remarkably resilient, and she clearly has something to live for." Riley spent the night in the clinic, sleeping fitfully in a chair beside Kira's bed. The staff allowed the unprecedented arrangement, understanding the bond between the retired military working dog and her handler. Throughout the night, Riley found herself talking to Kira, sharing memories of their time together and expressing gratitude for their partnership. When morning came, Kira showed signs of improvement that surprised everyone. Her breathing was easier, her heart rate more stable, and she was able to drink water and eat a small amount of food. Dr. Foster was cautiously optimistic, noting that dogs often responded well to being with their handlers during medical crises. Agent Chen arrived at the clinic with updates on the investigation. Patterson had been charged with kidnapping, human trafficking, and conspiracy, with additional charges pending as the FBI unraveled the full scope of the trafficking network. His injuries were being treated at the county hospital under heavy guard. Maria is doing well, Agent Chen reported. Her aunt arrived this morning, and the reunion was beautiful. Maria specifically asked me to check on you and Kira. She wants to know if she can visit before she leaves for California. Riley looked at Kira, who had lifted her head at the sound of voices. The dog's tail moved slightly, and her eyes were more alert than they had been since the collapse. I think Kira would like that very much. The visit was arranged for later that afternoon, with Maria accompanied by her aunt, a kind-faced woman named Carmen, who bore a strong resemblance to her brother David. Maria had been cleaned up and was wearing new gray clothes, but she still moved with the cautious gait of someone who had learned to expect danger. When she saw Kira lying in the hospital bed, Maria began to cry. But these were different tears than the ones she had shed in the shelter. Tears of relief and gratitude, rather than fear and desperation. "Hi, Kira," Maria whispered, approaching the bed slowly. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for bringing Riley to help me." Kira's response was remarkable. Despite her weakness, she lifted her head and gently licked Maria's hand, her tail wagging with more strength than she had shown since arriving at the clinic. The connection between the girl and the dog was immediately apparent, a bond forged in the darkness of that concrete shelter. Carmen Gonzalez had tears in her eyes as she watched the interaction. "David would be so grateful," she told Riley. "He never stopped looking for Maria, never stopped hoping. Knowing that she's been found, that she's safe, it would mean everything to him." Riley found herself telling Carmen about her father, about the investigation 3 years earlier, and how David's love for his daughter had driven him to uncover the trafficking operation. She left out the details about the details. His death, focusing instead on his dedication and the depth of his caring. "He was a good man," Riley concluded. "Maria is lucky to have had him as a father, and lucky to have you as family now." The visit lasted for several hours, with Maria sitting beside Kira's bed and talking quietly to the dog. She told Kira about her memories of life before the kidnapping, about her father and their home in California, about her hopes for the future now that she was free. Kira listened with the patient attention that had always characterized her interactions with children, occasionally offering gentle licks or nuzzles when Maria's emotions became overwhelming. When it was time for Maria and Carmen to leave for the airport, the goodbye was heartbreaking. Maria hugged Kira carefully, mindful of the fourth lines and medical equipment, whispering promises to never forget her and to always be grateful for her rescue. "Will you write to me?" Maria asked Riley. "Will you tell me how Kira is doing?" Riley promised to stay in touch, knowing that maintaining connection with Maria would be important for both of their healing processes. The girl had become part of their story now, linked forever to the moment when Kira had chosen to fight one more time, to serve one more mission, to save one more life. Over the following weeks, Kira defied medical expectations. Her condition remained stable, and she was able to return home to Riley's property in the mountains. The familiar surroundings seemed to energize her, and she enjoyed gentle walks along the forest trails where their adventure had begun. Riley arranged for hospice care from Dr. Foster, ensuring that Kira would be comfortable and pain-free for whatever time remained. The house filled with flowers and cards from law enforcement agencies around the country, recognition for Kira's final act of service. Media outlets picked up the story of the heroic military working dog who had led authorities to a kidnapped girl, and donations poured in to support other retired military working dogs. But for Riley, the most meaningful communication came in the form of regular letters from Maria. The girl was adapting well to life with her aunt in California, attending therapy, and slowly working through the trauma of her captivity. Her letters were filled with questions about Kira's daily routine, requests for photos, and updates on her own healing journey. "I dream about the shelter sometimes," Maria wrote in one letter. "But when I get scared, I remember how brave Kira was, how she wasn't afraid to fight the bad man. It helps me be brave too." 6 weeks after the rescue, Riley woke to find Kira standing by the back door, looking out at the forest with an expression of alertness she hadn't shown in weeks. When Riley opened the door, Kira walked slowly, but purposefully into the yard, settling herself in a sunny spot where she could see the trail that led to the shelter. Riley joined her there, sitting in the grass and watching the play of sunlight through the trees. They remained there for most of the morning, Kira occasionally lifting her head to test the air for interesting scents, Riley simply enjoying the peaceful companionship that had sustained them both through so many challenges. "You know," Riley said quietly, "I was going to have you put to sleep that day. I was so focused on your pain, on how tired you seemed, that I almost missed what you were trying to tell me." Kira turned her head to look at Riley, her amber eyes still bright with intelligence and affection. "You knew she was out there, didn't you? You knew someone needed our help." Riley reached out to stroke the familiar fur behind Kira's ears. "You weren't ready to quit because the job wasn't finished yet." As the afternoon wore on, Kira's breathing began to change, becoming slower and more labored despite her medication. Riley recognized the signs and called Dr. Foster, who arrived within an hour to assess the bomb situation. "Her heart is failing," Dr. Foster confirmed after her examination. "She's not in pain, but this is likely her last day. I can provide supportive care to keep her comfortable, or we can discuss euthanasia to ensure she doesn't suffer." Riley looked at Kira, who was resting peacefully in the sunshine, with her head resting on Riley's leg. The decision that had seemed so difficult 6 weeks earlier now felt completely natural. "Let her go naturally," Riley decided. "She's earned the right to choose her own moment." Dr. Foster administered additional pain medication and adjusted Kira's other medications to ensure maximum comfort. Then she left Riley and Kira alone together, promising to return in a few hours to check on them. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the yard, Kira lifted her head one final time to look toward the forest trail. Her tail moved slightly, and Riley could swear she saw satisfaction in the dog's expression, the look of a job well done. "Thank you, partner," Riley whispered. "Thank you for 13 years of faithful service. Thank you for saving Maria. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the hardest missions are the most important ones." Kira's breathing grew shallower as the last light faded from the sky. Riley continued to stroke her fur and speak softly to her, sharing favored memories and expressing gratitude for their partnership. When the end came, it was peaceful, Kira simply closing her eyes and releasing her final breath with Riley's hand on her head. Riley sat with Kira's body for a long time after, watching the stars appear in the clear mountain sky and feeling the weight of their shared history. 13 years of partnership had come to an end, but the impact of their final mission together would continue rippling outward in ways Riley was only beginning to understand. Dr. Foster returned as promised, helping Riley make arrangements for Kira's body. They decided on cremation, with the ashes to be interred at the National War Dog Cemetery in Virginia, where Kira would rest alongside other military working dogs who had given their lives in service. The ceremony would wait until Maria could attend, a request the girl had made in a tear-stained phone call the night Kira died. The weeks following Kira's death brought a parade of visitors to Riley's mountain property. Fellow military police officers drove from across the country to pay their respects, sharing stories of their own canine partners and the bonds that defined their service. Agent Chen visited regularly, providing updates on the trafficking investigation that had expanded to include arrests in 6 states and 3 countries. "Patterson's cooperation has been invaluable," Chen reported during one visit. "He's provided information about trafficking routes, client lists, and financial networks that we never could have discovered otherwise. The plea agreement includes life in prison without parole, but his information has already led to the rescue of 17 other children." End quote. Riley felt satisfaction at the news, knowing that Kira's final mission had accomplished far more than just saving Maria. Every child rescued represented a family reunited, a life saved from unimaginable horror. The ripple effects of that afternoon in the forest continued to spread, touching lives across the globe. The media attention surrounding Kira's story had generated significant public interest in military working dogs and their handlers. Riley found herself reluctantly accepting interviews, using the platform to advocate for better care and retirement benefits for aging military dogs. She established the Bryant Foundation, with donations that poured in from around the world, dedicated to providing medical care and comfortable retirement for military working dogs. But the most meaningful development came in the form of Maria's continued recovery. The girl had started school in California and was excelling academically. her sharp intelligence finally free to flourish in a safe environment. Her letters to Riley became less frequent, but more mature, showing a young woman learning to process trauma while embracing hope for the future. "I've been thinking about what I want to do when I grow up," Maria wrote in a letter that arrived 3 months after Kira's death. "Aunt Carmen says I should follow my dreams, but I think my dreams are really about following Kira's example. I want to help find people who are lost, like she found me." The letter included a school essay Maria had written about heroes, focusing on Kira and the qualities that made the dog exceptional. Riley found herself crying as she read Maria's words, recognizing in them the same determination and courage that had characterized her father. "Heroes don't always look like what we expect," Maria had written. "Sometimes they're old and tired and hurt, but they keep going anyway because someone else needs help. My hero was a dog named Kira who could have rested but chose to fight instead. She taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what's right even when you are scared." The essay won first place in a statewide competition, earning Maria a scholarship to a summer program for students interested in law enforcement careers. When she called to share the news, her voice was bright with excitement and possibility. "Riley, they said I can visit the FBI field office and meet real agents, and there's a program where I can learn about search and rescue dogs. Do you think Kira would be proud of me?" "I know she would be proud of you, sweetheart," Riley replied, meaning every word. "You're honoring her memory by helping others, and that's exactly what she would want." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Maria sharing details about her new life and her plans for the future. She was in counseling and had made friends at school. She had joined the school's volunteer club and was tutoring younger students who struggled with reading. Most importantly, she was sleeping through the night again, the nightmares that had plagued her for months finally beginning to fade. As spring arrived in the Oregon mountains, Riley found herself returning regularly to the spot where Kira had died. The clearing had become a place of reflection and remembrance where she could feel closest to her departed partner. She had installed a simple granite marker there, engraved with Kira's name, service dates, and a single word: hero. It was during one of these visits that Riley encountered an unexpected visitor. A young German shepherd, perhaps 2 years old, emerged from the forest and approached the memorial site with curious confidence. The dog wore a collar but no leash, suggesting an owner somewhere nearby. "Hello there," Riley said softly, extending her hand for the dog to sniff. "Where did you come from?" The German shepherd's response was immediate and enthusiastic, pressing against Riley's leg with the kind of instant trust that reminded her powerfully of Kira's temperament. As she petted the young dog, Riley heard footsteps approaching through the trees. "Rex! There you are!" called a woman's voice. And a moment later, a figure in Forest Service uniform appeared in the clearing. She was in her 30s, with the thick build and alert eyes of someone accustomed to outdoor work. "I'm so sorry," the woman said, approaching with a leash in her hand. He's usually better about staying close, but something caught his attention and he took off. "I'm Ranger Jennifer Walsh, and this is Rex." Riley introduced herself, explaining her connection to the property and the significance of the memorial. Jennifer's expression shifted to one of recognition and respect as she realized who Riley was. "You're the woman who found Maria Gonzalez," Jennifer said. "The story was all over the news. What your dog did, leading you to that shelter, it was incredible." They talked for several minutes about Kira's final mission and the investigation that had followed. Jennifer revealed that she worked with search and rescue teams throughout the Pacific Northwest, often partnering with dog handlers to locate missing persons in wilderness areas. "Rex here is in training for search and rescue work," Jennifer explained, scratching behind the dog's ears. "He's got great instincts, but he's still learning discipline and focus. The best working dogs have that combination of intelligence and heart that can't really be taught." Riley found herself studying Rex's alert expression and confident posture, recognizing qualities that reminded her of Kira in her younger days. An idea began to form in her mind, one that felt both natural and inevitable. "Would you be interested in a training partner?" Riley asked. "I'm rusty after 3 years out of service, but I spent a decade working with military dogs. I might be able to help with Rex's development." Jennifer's face lit up with enthusiasm. That would be amazing. We're always looking for experienced handlers to work with our teams, and Rex clearly likes you already. The arrangement began the following week, with Riley driving down from her mountain property 3 times a week to work with Rex at the Forest Service training facility. The work felt natural and familiar, awakening skills that had lain dormant since her retirement from the military. Rex proved to be an eager student, his intelligence and enthusiasm reminding Riley constantly of Kira's early training days. More importantly, the work gave Riley a sense of purpose that had been missing since Kira's death. She discovered that she missed the structure and meaning of working with dogs, the satisfaction of developing their abilities, and watching them succeed. The Kira Bryant Foundation provided financial support, but this hands-on training work fed something deeper in Riley's soul. As Rex's skills developed, Riley found herself expanding her involvement with the search and rescue team. She began accompanying them on actual missions, helping to locate lost hikers and missing persons throughout the Cascade Mountains. The work was fulfilling in ways she hadn't expected, connecting her military experience to civilian service in a meaningful way. 6 months after beginning work with Rex, Riley received a call from Agent Chen with news that brought their story full circle. The FBI had identified another potential victim of the trafficking network, a 15-year-old boy who had been missing from a military base in Germany for over a year. Intelligence suggests he might be held somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, Chen explained. We're organizing a multi-agency search effort, and I'd like to request Rex and your team's assistance. Your experience with this particular network could be invaluable. Riley felt her pulse quicken at the prospect of another rescue mission. What do we know about the location? Not much yet, but the pattern suggests they're using removed properties similar to where Maria was held, abandoned structures, difficult access, areas where someone could be held without detection. It's exactly the kind of terrain where search and rescue dogs excel. End quote. The mission launched 2 days later, with teams deployed across a vast area of national forest land in southern Oregon. Riley and Rex were assigned to search abandoned mining claims and old logging sites, areas where the terrain made vehicle access difficult, but where structures might still exist. On the second day of the search, Rex alerted to human scent near an abandoned mine shaft, his behavior shifting to the focused intensity that Riley recognized from their training sessions. Unlike the casual alerting dogs showed to hikers or campers, this was the specific response Rex had been trained to display when detecting someone in distress. "Good boy," Riley whispered, checking Rex's position and preparing to call in the discovery. But as she reached for her radio, she heard something that made her freeze. A faint tapping sound, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from somewhere underground. The sound was Morse code. 3 short taps, 3 long taps, 3 short taps again. SOS, the universal distress signal. Someone below ground was signaling for help, and they had enough presence of mind to use a method that would be recognized by rescuers. Riley immediately called in the discovery, and within an hour, the mine site was swarming with FBI agents, local law enforcement, and specialized rescue equipment. The mine shaft descended nearly 40 feet into the earth, with wooden support beams that had been recently reinforced, suggesting current use of the facility. The rescue operation took most of the day, requiring specialized equipment to safely extract the victim from the underground chamber. When the boy finally emerged, blinking in the afternoon sunlight, Riley felt the same surge of satisfaction and relief she had experienced the day Maria was freed from the concrete shelter. The victim was Alex Morrison, a 15-year-old whose father was stationed at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. He had been missing for 14 months, taken while visiting relatives in Portland. His physical condition was poor but stable, and his psychological resilience was remarkable, demonstrated by his ability to signal for help when he heard the search teams above ground. "Thank you," Alex whispered to Riley as paramedics prepared him for transport to the hospital. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Riley knelt beside the stretcher, Rex sitting alertly at her side. "We never give up," she told the boy. "That's what search and rescue means. We keep looking until everyone comes home." As Alex was transported to safety, Riley found herself thinking about Kira and the chain of events that had brought them to this moment. Kira's final mission had not only saved Maria, but had set in motion a series of investigations and rescues that continued to return children to their families. The aging German Shepherd's refusal to give up had created a legacy of hope that would continue long after her death. Agent Chen joined Riley beside the mineshaft as the crime scene team began their work. "That's 18 children recovered thanks to the Patterson investigation," she said. 18 families reunited because an old dog wouldn't quit and her handler trusted her instincts. Riley looked at Rex, who was resting in the shade but remained alert to his surroundings. The young dog had performed flawlessly during his first real mission, demonstrating the same dedication and intelligence that had characterized Kira's service. "It's not about the individual dogs," Riley said. "It's about the bond between handlers and their partners, the trust that lets us do things we couldn't accomplish alone. Kira taught me that partnership doesn't end with death. It transforms into something that continues through others." The drive back to Riley's mountain property took her past the turnoff to the trail where Kira had made her final discovery. On impulse, Riley pulled over and walked the familiar path to the memorial site, Rex trotting beside her with easy familiarity. The granite marker looked exactly as she had left it, simple and dignified in the forest setting. But someone had left fresh flowers there, and a small envelope was tucked beneath the stone. Riley opened it to find a letter from Maria, postmarked from California. "Dear Riley and Kira," the letter began. "I'm writing this on the anniversary of the day you found me. I wanted to visit in person, but Aunt Carmen says maybe next year when I'm older. I think about you both every single day, especially Kira. I hope she knows how many people she helped by saving me." The letter continued with updates about Maria's life and her continued interest in law enforcement. She had joined her school's volunteer search and rescue club and was learning basic first aid and wilderness survival skills. Her grades were excellent, and she had been accepted into a summer program for students interested in criminal justice careers. "I know I'm still young," Maria wrote, "but I've decided I want to become an FBI agent when I grow up. I want to help find missing children like Kira found me. Agent Chen said it's a hard job, but I think Kira taught me that sometimes the hard jobs are the most important ones." Riley felt tears on her cheeks as she finished reading. She looked down at Rex, who was sitting quietly beside the memorial, his attention focused on the forest around them, with the same alertness Kira had always shown. "What do you think, boy?" Riley asked, scratching behind Rex's ears. "Are you ready to help some more people get home?" Rex's response was a gentle wag of his tail and a soft woof of agreement. He stood and moved to the granite marker, sniffing carefully at the base before sitting in respectful attention, as if paying his respects to the dog whose legacy he was continuing. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows through the forest, Riley felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. Kira's story had not ended with her death. It had evolved into something larger and more meaningful. Through Rex's training, through the ongoing investigations, through Maria's determination to help others, Kira's final mission continued to save lives and reunite families. The memorial stood silent in the gathering darkness, a testament to courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds between partners who serve others. And in the forest around it, new stories were beginning, carried forward by those who understood that the greatest heroism often comes from the simple choice to keep going when others would give up. Riley turned to leave the memorial site, Rex walking beside her with the confident gait of a dog who knew his purpose. Behind them, the granite marker caught the last rays of sunlight, the single word, hero, glowing briefly before fading into the peaceful darkness of the mountain night. The legacy lived on, carried forward by new partnerships, new missions, and the eternal truth that some bonds transcend even death itself. In the end, that was Kira's greatest gift. Not just the life she had saved, but the understanding that service to others creates ripples that extend far beyond any single act of courage. Riley Bryant had thought she was saying goodbye to her partner that day in the veterinary clinic. Instead, she had discovered that the most important partnerships never truly end. They simply transform into something larger and more enduring, touching lives in ways that stretch across time and space, like the eternal bonds between those who serve together.